updated on that developing situation in Iran as events do unfold. But next, we move to Europe, and Russia has launched one of its heaviest aerial assaults in recent weeks, battering Ukraine with missiles and drones and further crippling the country's energy infrastructure. More than 24 missiles and nearly 250 drones have struck targets across Ukraine. In the eastern Kharkiv region, 4 people were killed and 6 others injured after buildings were hit outside the regional capital. Emergency workers were seen pulling survivors from rubble as fires burned in freezing temperatures. Ukraine's largest energy provider, DTEK, has confirmed that one of its power plants was hit, marking the 8th such strike since October. President Volodymyr Zelensky has said several 100,000 households near Kyiv were left without power and again urged allies to strengthen Ukraine's air defense. Gilbert Doctorow joins us now. He is a Russian affairs expert. He joins us live from Brussels, Belgium. Thank you very much, Gilbert. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. I want to start with Zelensky's statements there. Ukraine needing more air defenses and air defense systems. Do you think that the Ukrainian president will be able to get his hands on them, given the current relationship with Europe and with Trump, and of course the new loans that have been approved for Kyiv?
Well, he may get his hands on some additional air defense systems, but they will slip through his hands. The Russians have demonstrated in the last week or two that they're totally capable of destroying Patriot air defenses from the United States and European air defenses. So they are virtually worthless. This is all empty rhetoric on the part of Mr. Zelensky that will not save Ukraine from the complete destruction of its energy infrastructure.
Gilbert, of course, we're in the midst of an Eastern European winter now in both Russia and in Ukraine. How is that playing into this conflict in a more broader sense, both on the front line and on the civilian front as well?
Well, of course, it's a particular hardship for the general population if they are deprived of water, of electricity, of gas in winter. However, if you live, as many people do, in Kyiv, which has a great number of high-rise residential buildings, if you live on the 20th floor in the summertime, it is no more habitable when it has no electricity for the elevators, for lifts, than it is in the wintertime. The point is that the Russians are not inventing some new method of warfare. They are taking a page, and this is not my observation, it's their own observation on Russian talk shows, that they are taking a page from the United States in its 1999 bombing of Belgrade. The first thing the Americans did was to destroy bridges across the Danube and to destroy every energy generating plant that they could find. And their logic was to deprive the military of all sources of power. In the case that we're talking about now, there's an overlay here. The Russians have been talking, you mentioned Kharkiv, the Russians have been talking about depopulating Kharkiv for some time. Kharkiv is the second largest city in Ukraine. It is close to the border with the Russian Federation, close to 3 oblasts or regions of Russia, which have been attacked from forces dispatched from Kharkiv. Now, the Russians have been talking for 6 months or more about threatening Kharkiv with leveling, with total destruction, for which they would give the population 3 days to leave. And the general intent of the Russians is to drive the population out of these major cities and into emigration, refugees in Europe. That serves 2 purposes. First, it weakens Ukraine. It doesn't have a working population anymore. And second, it destroys the economies of Central Europe. And it forces the Europeans to come to negotiations with Russia.
And we've seen another development today. The United States has slammed this, what it calls an escalation. Tammy Bruce, the US's deputy ambassador to the United Nations, told the UN Security Council and says Russia's actions risks expanding and intensifying the war. What are your thoughts on that statement?
Actually, if we're talking about the issue of depopulating Ukrainian cities and sending a few more million refugees into Western Europe, the net result will be a reduction of casualties and deaths on the battlefield because the war will end that much quicker. So it's all a question of your perspective. The statements by the United States, the UN, are correct in one sense. It's intensifying the war, but for the purpose of de-intensifying the war by ending it soon.
Gilbert Doctorow, do stay with us as we move on to our next story, a related development in fact. And Russia's state-owned oil company, Rosneft, has said it will continue to strictly fulfill its obligations in close coordination with its international partners. In a statement, the company reaffirmed its commitment to ongoing projects and cooperation abroad, signalling continuity in its operations despite geopolitical pressures. Rosneft did not provide further details, but has said it remains focused on meeting contractual commitments and maintaining stable partnerships. We move on now, but stay in Europe, and hundreds of French farmers drove their tractors into the heart of Paris, blocking major roads near